OK, let's have a look through the newspapers this morning with European political commentator Nina Schick. That's quite a title, Nina, isn't it?
Yeah.
And A&E doctor Kishan Rees. Good morning to you both. Can we just have a look at the Observer, Kish? Looking at, obviously, the Sunbury yesterday, where the raid was carried out on this house.
Yes, I mean, it's covered in a lot of the papers, as you can imagine, I mean, being quite a big story. And although the Observer doesn't mention it, in one of them it was talking about how he may have been a refugee. And again, I just think we should be careful. I can remember when we were talking about in November, when we first met, we were talking about Brexit and how the media kind of splash refugees all over the place. As a first generation, my mum was a refugee, came to this country from Uganda. I'd like to think I've made a bit of a positive contribution. I think we can have, we need to be careful about the kind of rhetoric that is used in these situations in terms of having like an open, multicultural society.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, there is a danger, as you say, of heading down the wrong line with that. And at the moment, we don't actually know who this 18-year-old is at all. So, and even if it is linked to this particular house, and obviously with the raid taking place, you'd assume so. But there's a lot of questions still to be answered on that. Sunday Times, Kish, looking at tuition fees.
Yes, I think this is a positive thing. You're laughing.
Well, you know, I just sort of, I mean, it sounds fabulous if you're a student or a parent of a student, doesn't it?
I think if it's possible, it's a good thing. I mean, I look at it from the point of view, when I went out of medical school in 2009, I left with £26,000 worth of debt. The medical students that I teach now come out with £100,000 worth of debt. And if we're going to be encouraging the brightest talent in to be doctors in hospitals, which you would have thought we want, then we need to make higher education affordable, and so we're not saddling them with a mountain of debt that they're never going to be able to pay back.
Yeah, but university admissions are up, particularly from or including, this is what the government is saying anyway, including those from poorer backgrounds.
I think I saw on Friday somebody was saying that the dropout rate is actually quite high from the people from poor backgrounds.
So they claim that.
So
yeah.
I don't know whether that's
true or not.
But I think, you know, if we can do something about it. I mean, the interesting thing that's changed is, certainly when I was going through medical school, if I didn't understand something, I'd go out and I'd go and buy a book. And it's changed the culture in terms of medical students, and all students are just demanding. There's an air of consumerism, which, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I think it's, you know, it's a mixed picture, but we should be aware of it.
This would cost, to cut tuition fees by £5,000 would cost an awful lot of money. And as my dad always says, you can only spend money once. So would you rather it went on something like this, or would you rather it went on junior doctors getting better, and nurses getting better money, better salaries?
It depends on where we want to spend it, doesn't it? And like having gone through an election campaign when there's no money, and then after there was £1 billion for a deal with the DUP, you kind of wonder, well, what positive contribution are a good universities going to bring to the country? And you'd think if we're going to leave the EU and Brexit happens, then we'd want that. We'd want a strong, vibrant higher education sector that's making innovation and kind of creative people. But I don't know, who knows?
Yeah. OK, lovely. On that note, we shall leave it. Send us your thoughts. That's Sky, Stephen. That's me, isn't it? I had to think about that.
That is you, yeah.
At Sunrise Isabel, that's her. And we'll be back with more in a moment. We're not going to talk about Watford losing dreadfully yesterday, are we, Kish?
No, well, we can if you want.
more in just a second. So we're looking at the papers with Nina and Kish. Let's talk Sunday People. Kish and a teenager who's doing some real good.
So yeah, Libby Jones from Merthyr Tydfil got friends to wear colourful clothes and give £1. So Mia, who's a patient who's got neuroblastoma, which is quite a rare brain tumour affecting less than 100 children a year, to go to the States to get treatment. So there's two things here in terms of, you know, it's a very positive thing in terms of this, they've raised this money. But also it comes down to how we're going to fund a health service and what, you know, is this something that we're going to see more and more of? Because certainly in the States, where there's an insurance-based model, the decisions as to whether you live or die is dependent on how popular you are and how much money you can raise in terms of to pay for insurances and things. So, yeah.
Well, she's done a really good... I went to school with someone called Libby Jones. It's not the same one, obviously, because she's 13.
A little bit younger.
There you
Not
go.
much.
Yeah. Oh, Libby Jones is really about 42 now. Sorry, Libby.
Get in touch. Stephen.
Lovely. Thank you both. See you a little bit later on. Let's get a check on the sports headlines for you.
The boxing mega fight between Gennady Golovkin